Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to the Boring Company. Welcome everyone back with a nice presentation today. Just going to be talking about transport infrastructure in general. As you've previously heard me say on many episodes in the past, I believe there are lots and lots of different ways to serve the transport needs of a town or a city or even a village or a country or however you want to look at it really. And you know, there's the easy way of doing it, and then there's the expensive way of doing it. There are lots and lots of ways to do it, and you know, I'm constantly reminded on Twitter and in the comments section on YouTube that, you know what, just build a train. I constantly get that kind of comment, and you know, I have to constantly educate people that it's just not the right solution everywhere. In some places, yeah, it is a good solution, and I'd recommend doing it, especially if you've already got a really big rail infrastructure in a particular area and it's very dense. Then maybe you know, it might be a good idea to add more railways. However, there might be places where the Boring Company could come in and make things a little bit more efficient and do it in a more cost-effective manner. And I wanted to just have a look at some other infrastructure projects and kind of compare the prices, because at the end of the day, it always comes down to price. If you're making a decision as a part of a group, and you know, one option comes in at 50 million and the other option comes in at 100 million, you know, it's a very easy decision. It doesn't really matter if the other option does things slightly better or is slightly more, easier to use, or is, you know, a well-respected kind of option that you've seen before. It all comes down to cost. Obviously, metrics play a part. You want a good throughput as well, but if the other system is offering a good throughput and it's offering a much more cost-effective option, then you're going to go for that more cost-effective option. So infrastructure is the backbone of every economy. Yeah, pretty much every working economy anyway has good infrastructure. You know, that's certainly the case here in the UK. There's lots and lots of other countries as well. If you do not have an effective means of moving goods and people around, an economy will stagnate. And I think that's a good word, stagnate, because you can have a reasonably good economy, but if the infrastructure is not there, you've not got good roads, bridges, you know, ports, railways, that kind of thing, airports, you're going to have some problems trying to expand that economy. It's just going to stagnate. It might even start to decline as other economies expand their infrastructure. So, you know, you've got to keep working on perfecting that infrastructure in your particular economy. Efficient economies like Japan, specifically Japan, South Korea as well. South Korea is almost as good as Japan, I'd say now. Certainly caught up, but Japan to begin with in sort of the 70s and 80s was a world of its own in terms of infrastructure, really good infrastructure. Germany as well, China, benefit greatly from good infrastructure. If you have poor infrastructure, it makes a lot of sense to invest in it, absolutely big time. But what you're going to invest in? Are you going to invest in the tried and tested and pay an absolute shitload of money on a project, absolutely break the bank to make it happen, and then at the end of the day, you're stuck paying that debt, and you've got requests for building other infrastructure projects. Where do you go from that? You know, you are stuck. Blowing excessive money on infrastructure projects can cause toxic debt, big time. A great example of this is California high-speed rail. I don't think they're going to finish even half of it, based on what I'm reading, and it's really disappointing because California needs a high-speed rail network, but it's a joke. It really is a joke. If they can't deliver it, cost effectively, they shouldn't deliver it at all, because there are other options. This channel supports all forms of transport infrastructure that is useful and cost effective, and those are two really important things there: useful and cost effective. It's got to be both. If it's useful and it costs an absolute mountain of money, then you're not going to recover from that, and it's going to result in other things being cut back. So you need it to be useful and cost effective. If that means dragging out the timeline of the job, then that's what you need to do. But we certainly support all forms of infrastructure. And there's lots of good examples of infrastructure, which I'm going to talk about today. Some of it good, some of it bad. But it all goes back to something that kind of jolted me into action on this particular video. And Warren Redlick was talking to Jason from Jalopnik about the Las Vegas Convention Center. And Jason wasn't really too keen on the Boeing company and the system there. And, that's fair. He can have his own opinion. But he didn't even know that there was another alternative. And he didn't even offer an option that was better. And the reason he couldn't offer an option that was better, because there isn't one. Not for that kind of price. You have to spend excessive amounts of money and wait excessive amounts of time to get another option up and running. And the people that run the Las Vegas Convention Center the Las Vegas Convention Center, don't want to wait around for years, and they don't want to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. What they want to do is they want to have something that works, it's efficient, it's cost effective, and then they could just leave another company to manage it and focus on what they do best, which is run the conference center. And people don't really understand that. They don't really compare the options. They don't think about the pros and cons of the various other systems. And their answer is simply build a train system. Well, it's not always possible. It's not. You can't just pull money out of your arse and build these things. The money's not there. The money's often is just not there to build these things. So it can't be built. So you've got to find a better way of doing it. And I believe the Boeing company proved this when they went up against Doppelmayr. Now, Doppelmayr make these cable car systems, which is these kind of things down here. Now, I quite like them. I think they're really good. They're not exactly the fastest things in the world, but they seem quite effective in the kind of places where they operate, and they work at high, high inclines and gradients. So, they have a use case, but in this particular instance, it's just too expensive and it's just too slow. So they did actually think about building an underground metro system, but it was never proposed because it probably would have cost close to $300 million. We never ever found out how much it potentially could have costed. So there's no possibility of a metro. There's the possibility of this cable car system. Doppelmayr came in initially with 215 and then they revised it to 180. I believe the 215 was for a 6,000 per hour system. I'm imagining that this would have been closer to 4,000. So even though they were cutting down on the throughput per hour, they still couldn't match the Boeing company. And that's what it came down to. It came down to a numbers game. And the numbers game is an easy victory for the Boeing company, because not only have they got a very high speed system with good throughputs, the cost of building those tunnels and those very basic stations, and the fact that they're using essentially modified Tesla vehicles means that they can cut costs way down. It was around 49-50 million. So you could almost build 4 systems for the same price, almost. So the LVCC board voted 12-2 in favour of the Boeing company over Doppelmayr. I think it was these two people that voted against it, if I remember correctly. I think it was Goodman and Fiore, but I'll have to research that again. But most people, made the right decision. They looked at that, and then they looked at the 49 million, and they said, hey, easy peasy, I'm going to go for the Boeing company. And what is the lesson here? Cost comparisons matter. You're not, and remember, when they give you this number, this is not a fixed price. That could end up 250, 300 maybe, sometimes if it really goes badly. And you would, you're not going to say, hey, you're gonna have to stop now. We've already paid you 100 million, so just stop there, and then we'll talk about it for 2 years. It's not going to happen. You're going to end up being, forced, basically blackmailed into paying another 50, 60, 70 million. And I'll give you some examples of some projects where that has happened, where they've been given basically prices and they've been forced to take on more debt in order to finish those projects. The only thing that matters is that the thing that you're buying is fit for purpose. You can look at something and it can make more financial sense to have this thing, but really, in terms of how you use the other thing, it works out better. So I'll give you this kind of strange example. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, you must have a concussion. Why are you showing me jars of mayonnaise? Well, I'm going to give you an interesting comparison here. Yeah? Typically, if I'm going to buy a jar of mayonnaise, which takes me a good 3 to 4 months to consume, I'm going to buy this one because it's the right size for me. It does the job. I don't need more than that. But if you were a railway engineer, you would be telling everyone, buy this. Buy the big one. Because if you buy the big one, look at this, you get all this mayonnaise. And it's, if you work it out per kilogram, it's 12.29% better value for money. This huge, massive jar of mayonnaise, 4.8 kilograms. But in the real world, this is just not how it works. People say to you, if you build a cycle lane, that cycle lane can have 2,000 cyclists going through it every hour. This is amazing. Why would you not build that cycle lane? Why would you build a Boeing company system in that area? Just build a cycle lane. First of all, not everyone's going to use a cycle lane. And if you actually look at these cycle lanes, the throughput is closer to about 200 per hour. Never mind 1,500, 2,000. So even though you're getting better value for money, I'm not going to buy the big jar of mayonnaise because number one, it's going to take me 18 months to consume it, and then about 12 months in, it's going to start to go off, and I'm just going to throw it away. So on paper, it might look like, hey, it's got more in it, you're going to get more out of it, but you're not. And the same goes for train lines. They tell you the throughput is X, Y, Z, super high, it's amazing, look at that. You can get so many people in this vehicle, in this train here. It's the safest thing you could ever build, blah, 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 blah. But it finishes late. It costs more than what it says it's going to cost. And a lot less people use it than what was said. So at the end of the day, you've got to think about these comparisons and find out what is best for you. Because this might be better than this for probably most people. And it certainly is for me. It wouldn't even fit in my fridge, that. Literally wouldn't. Anyway, stupid example over. Let's have a look at some real transport examples here. So, I'm going to go to one of my favourite systems in the USA. And it's BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit System. Now, the BART was a revolutionary system when it came up. It was in the late 60s or late 70s. And there's a lot of fanfare around this particular system. And it was, it was a very useful system. People enjoy using it. It's definitely benefiting the people of California and San Francisco and around. And it actually goes to the Fremont factory for Tesla. But the question is it cost effective to build? Because they are talking about extending it even more, and they are just kind of halfway through this Silicon Valley extension. And really, what I want to try to portray to everyone today is how much do these various systems cost. So the Silicon Valley extension has been completed in 3 parts. Parts 1 and 2 have been completed, or they're almost completed. The last part that kind of connects up to 1 and 2 is part 3, and that's got a capacity of around 18,250 per hour. So it's not too bad at all. The question is, are people going to use it at that kind of capacity, or is it going to be way under that? Because at the moment, BART is operating 83% below its all-time high. So what is the cost per mile of something like this? Because I'm always banging on about the Boeing company and saying, hey, the Boeing company can build tunnels for almost $5 million per mile. When you add in things like stations and the road deck and ramps and things like that, you're probably getting closer to around 10 million per mile. But still, that's absolutely peanuts compared to some of these other systems. This is the cheap one. This is the one I'm showing you first. You're going to get quite excited for the next ones I show you, because the cost per mile is $224 million per mile. Now, that is an incredible amount of money, and it's not even finished yet. So that probably might end up closer to 250 million per mile. Who knows? but it has a good use case. So it's extending the coverage of the existing BART system, yeah? And there are a lot of good reasons why you would do that. However, could you also complement a system like this with some kind of interconnection with Boring Company? Potentially. And in doing so, you would increase the usage of this system as well. But generally speaking, I think that is a little bit high, but I can probably stomach that. You know, if you're in this kind of area and you are against BART, I would strongly suggest that you maybe reconsider that, because, you know, it's a very useful system in this particular area, and it can only get better with more and more extensions. I think you can warrant that, and I think that you could also do some things with the Boring Company as well and integrate that. So in summary, I'd say, yeah, it's got a good, you know, end goal, and I agree with it, and I think the price is reasonable. And for that reason, I think it's useful and it's cost effective, specifically because of this as well. So what else have we got? Oh my goodness. It is Crossrail. And as you know, I'm always bringing up this particular project. I'm not a Crossrail hater. If you'd have spoke to me 10 years ago, I would have said Crossrail is the best thing since sliced bread. It's brilliant. It's desperately needed. I had to tell you how I worked near London and the traffic was awful, and when I had to go into London, it was a joke, and something like this would be absolutely perfect. I actually worked on a job near Reading, which is where this kind of terminates. So, you know, this it makes a lot of sense, but it just got out of control. Absolutely out of control in everything. Everything was terrible. Right? The quality in certain parts was poor. It was well over budget, massively over budget, and it's not even finished yet. It should have been finished almost 4 years ago, and this thing is still going. Still going. They can call it a different name, but it is still been an absolute farce. The best railway engineers in the UK and some European engineers also worked on this project, some really good people, and they still couldn't make it work. It's incredible. So when we're considering this project, you've got to remember that a lot of it is connected up to the existing railway network. So there's a lot of existing lines that they're using. The most important part of Crossrail, it's not the entire part of Crossrail, but the most important part from a cost perspective is the line in between Paddington and Woolwich. So what is the capacity today? Because it should have finished. It should have finished. But today, its capacity is 0 people, because that tunnel between Paddington and Woolwich is just, it's still testing in there. Really, it should have a capacity of 70,000 per hour, and London desperately needs that. But, you know, there's some question marks about whether they're going to hit that as well. So we'll see. You know, I still think Crossrail should be built and it's needed, but it's just gone out of control. So I think I'm being very fair giving them this number, because I think that's a bit high. But when you work it out, it comes in at around £415 million per mile. That's getting on close to 500, so $500 million. Close to $500 million per mile. Does London need more railways? I mean, the existing railways are totally congested. And at some, you know, on some days they are dangerous to use just because there's so many people going through them. You know, I personally don't like using the railways when they get so busy, but you know, I don't think that it's a good idea throwing more and more people into London. There were some big plans for Crossrail 2. They have been scrapped. All those design costs, all the technical analysis of potential routes have been scrapped, because it was such an embarrassment, this project, and it finished so late. So at this moment in time, it's 4.55 billion over budget and almost 4 years late. You've got to ask yourself, you know, are you getting value for money here? You know, is it useful? Yes. Is it value for money? Probably not at this point. So it's a great shame that it was, you know, it was messed up. It was badly managed, and it failed in every possible metric. And, you know, hopefully someone can salvage it, but, you know, it potentially could end up being an absolute failure. If the only saving grace is that they maybe might be able to hit this. If that ends up well below that, if that ends up 50,000 per hour, it will be the greatest failure in the history of the railways in Europe. It really will. So it's a high cost, 415 million per mile, but that is absolutely nothing. Absolute peanuts. Minuscule compared to this bad boy. And it's insane. East Side Access Tunnel, New York City. Capacity. It's not moving anyone at all. The actual capacity that it's expected to do is only 12,800 per hour. And you might be saying to yourself, well, that seems quite high. Well, yeah, it is, but look at the cost. It's almost $3 billion per mile. It's insanity. The consultants and the unions and the contractors and the planners and everyone who would possibly got the fingers into this pie, and they ripped out the guts of it, and it is an insane number, and something like this should never ever happen again. 2.97 billion per mile. Just think about that. Just think about that. A lot of that goes into building these stations under Grand Central. Yes, of course, but without those stations, these tunnels are useless. So you have to include it. So yeah, is it useful? Somewhat useful. Is it value for money? Cost effective? Absolutely not. Should it have been built? Probably not. Really. Even at its original valuation, which you knew was going to be wrong the day they said it was going to cost like 4 billion. You knew it was going to come in at 5 billion when they said it was going to cost 4 billion. So the fact that it wasn't even, value for money on day one, after I don't know how many years it's been, 12 years, it's just shockers. Absolutely shocking. So yeah. Conclusion. So what is my conclusion? There are not that many great use cases for tunnels outside big cities. So if you want to build a metro system, it's going to cost you an absolute fortune. You need that high density. So you really, there's only maybe 3 or 4 cities in the entire USA where it's valuable to build tunnels and put trains in them. Every other city, it's just not, financially viable, and you're never ever going to get the funding approved. But something like the Boring Company is going to be much, much, much more cost effective, and therefore those smaller cities and those large towns, that is going to be the perfect use case for the Boring Company. I'm not going to say that the Boring Company would work in New York or London, but it will work in places like San Francisco, in Fremont, and around California, and where the lower density. And you need to pick suitable use cases for it. So the Boring Company can undercut most metro systems by 75 to 80%. And I think I'm being generous there. I think on some cases it might be higher than that. And all that money that is saved can then be invested in other public services. So that's good for everyone. And also it can be used to make the roads safer for cyclists and other electric vehicles. So, there's good to saving that money and utilising other systems. The Boring Company tunnels can be built in volume, will cut all forms of congestion. I'm not going to say that they're going to cut congestion to 0%, but they could certainly cut congestion by, 80-90%. Absolutely. And they can be built really quickly, and they can be built cost effectively, and the quality of the job will be excellent because the machine is built in that manner to build the tunnels very cost effectively, high quality, attention to detail. And you can build all the stations above ground, so it's a lot easier to do it in that way. And you don't necessarily need any stations, really. You could build this just purely tunnels, and it just drops people off at the side of the road, and that will cut your costs even more. So you'd be talking more like 90% less. Ballooning costs and delays are inevitable on big rail projects. It's absolutely, it's very, very, very difficult to find projects. It doesn't matter where you look, Australia or even Asia or Africa, South America, North America, Europe, big railway projects end up costing excessive amounts of money. They end up being late, and they end up not necessarily delivering everything that they promised from day one. It takes them many years to get up to what they say they can do. That's what you face with big rail. Big rail will tell you a number, and then as soon as you've signed on that piece of paper, they will tell you all the problems they need to solve and how they need to change these designs and how they must do things in a different way. And then before you know it, you're 30, 40, 50% over budget. And that's just in the first few years. And then it ends up getting insane. If your only focus is on railways, so if you're only focused on building more railways and everything else you discount, and you say it's not useful, I'm not going to consider it, you will bankrupt your city or your state, because the railways will take all your money. They'll take forever to build what they're saying they're going to build. Therefore, you won't see the economic benefits from that railway for many, many, many years. And then when it's built, the capacity is instantly used up, and then you have to build another one, and it's just forever. There's systems like BART and the New York City Underground and Crossrail. They should really have been built, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but they weren't. And that's the problem. You're always playing catch up with the railways because they take so long to build and they're always over budget. And as soon as you end up over budget, the next people that come in who are in charge of the coffers, they don't want to spend that money. A good planner will integrate all transportation into hubs. So a good planner will recognise the importance of all forms of transport, whether that be trams or metros or light rail or bikes or autonomous electric vehicles or VTOL, anything. He will realise how important they all are and try to have them integrated in certain parts of the city. And what that will then do, it will offer competition between the various transportation options, and then the best one, the most useful one, the one that's more cost effective and can therefore expand quicker, will end up winning. But everyone's a winner. Like they say, everyone's a winner, baby. That's for sure. So if you do that and you have all the options in these hubs, you will for sure benefit everyone, whether it be a cyclist or a train spotter or someone who wants to use electric vehicles, or even if you have VTOL. If you can bring it all into one place, you're going to encourage people to use those various systems, and you're going to get the most out of all of them. Because it's not always going to be efficient to use the train to get from point A to point B. You might go from point A to point C, and then have to go from point C to point B, because you're not necessarily going to have links to everything with railways or even buses. So you might need to move between different forms of transport. Tesla full self-driving and other level 4 systems. So I'm talking about things like Zoox and Cruise and Waymo. They will disrupt mass transit in 2025. As soon as these things come onto the scene, and you can pull out your phone and pay $5, $6 to get where you need to go, and it's super convenient, and it drops you exactly outside where you need to be, or there's minimal walking, and it does it at a good rate of progress. As soon as that is available, mass transit is in big trouble, because they can then be undercut, because mass transit is already losing money. BART is losing money every year. Crossrail is going to lose tons and tons of money when it eventually opens. They cannot afford to cut their tickets 20-30%. They just can't do it. So what happens is they freeze their fares and just hope that inflation is going to catch up, and then ultimately things like Tesla full self-driving and other level 4 systems will cut into their business and then make them even less solvent, because they're going to have less passengers. So that is a big thing that's going to come in, and that is going to make people apprehensive to build other mass transit systems. Converting public roads to toll roads. I've talked about this before, but if we want to make mass transit more cost effective, make setting up a mass transit system profitable, even if it does cost excessive amounts of money, and make it worthwhile, we need to convert all our roads in all our major cities into toll roads, and then make people pay their fair share for using those roads. Yeah? Maybe you don't pay anything if you're a cyclist. Maybe if you've got a very small car, you pay a very, very small amount. Maybe it's only 5 cents per mile. But if you're just one person in a car, a big car or a big van, you should be paying 20, 30 cents per mile. And it doesn't matter what road you're on, you should be paying to use that road. By having essentially public roads and letting people use them for free, you're creating an imbalance in the market, and that imbalance is pulling people into their own cars and making them use their cars rather than mass transit. So to get people out of the cars that they own, you need to have toll roads everywhere and then price them accordingly. There's no point having really cheap toll roads, and the technology to do this is it's available and it can be done. You can read people's number plates quite easily with multiple cameras these days. Okay, so that's kind of my thoughts on the matter. As you can see, mass transit is very, very expensive. I like mass transit. I think we should build more of it, but I think there are other options, and I think obviously we should integrate all those different things together, and just let the private sector run away with this and kind of innovate, rather than just focusing on public sector and local government and bureaucrats giving them free rein to invest whatever the hell they want. I don't think that's the right way. So please like and subscribe to this channel. I hope you liked the video. I hope I made some good points that you agree with. If you don't agree with those comments or you agree with them, please tell me in the comments below. Join me on Discord, Twitter and Instagram. Just updated Instagram yesterday, so there should be a few more pictures on there. Also appreciate some feedback on project cost and efficiency, so tell me what you think. Thank you to all my patrons, as always, constantly supporting this channel and offering me support so I can make better videos in the future. And thank you for watching. Please tell me what you think about this great video, and I hope I made some good points. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you, and remember, don't be boring. I will see you on the next one. Take care now. Thank you, and good night.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum.